Wireless LAN Weekly, Episode 37, Quick and Dirty 802.11n Design.
Welcome to Wireless LAN Weekly, a podcast focused on the wireless networking professional. We aim to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire. Get ready to listen and enjoy. Now to our host of the show, Keith Parsons.
Well, welcome back to Wireless LAN Weekly. I'm your host, Keith Parsons, and today we have an episode entitled Quick and Dirty 802.11 Design. I've been teaching about 802.11 for many years now. It's all about the new acronyms, MIMO, STBC, short guard interval, all the new technologies that are in there. The new acronyms are really tied to new changes in the physical layer and changes in the MAC layer. And there's a lot to learn about this new protocol. But invariably, whenever I'm teaching about 802.11n, the discussion leads to the question on how to design for 802.11n. I was first going to talk a little bit today about the morality of designing for and selling legacy APs today in the world when we know that 802.11n APs are far superior than any legacy AP could be, even when talking to a legacy client. But I'm going to leave that for a different episode, and we'll talk about that sometime in the future. Today we're going to talk about designing for .11n. First of all, there is a very long and technical and perhaps a bit boring answer to how to design for N. Or, as I found out in sharing the following solution with hundreds of individuals, there's this quick and dirty way. This is not the very best way to design for .11n, but it is a way that is quick, simple, easy, and it provides the 80 in the 80-20 rule. About 20% of the effort goes into this design, and you get about 80% of the bang. To get the last 20%, it's going to take a lot more effort. So I'm not going there. We're just going to start right into Keith's quick and dirty .11 design. First of all, this method of designing for .11n makes a couple of initial assumptions. First, I'm assuming you already have a 802.11 ABG system already in place that's working fine for you, both on the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz range. So your coverage is already working, it's all fine and dandy, but it's not N, it's legacy. So first assumption, you have that. Next assumption that is that you don't have a preponderance of .11a clients. You might have some, and that's okay. But if you do have a lot of .11a clients that are currently using your 5 gigahertz quite a bit, or if you have voice over IP handsets dedicated to the 5 gig, you might want to look at the option 2. So, two options that we're going to talk about. First option is the replace access point option. So in the first option, every place you have an 802.11 ABG AP, replace it with the .11n AP. If you did nothing but that alone and didn't change any configurations, you're still just legacy, that AP would do far superior than what you had in place already. So right there, you're getting a pretty big bang for your buck with all the N features. Even if you have them turned off, the N chipsets are better at decoding and listening and doing the job of an AP than any legacy AP ever could be. So you've replaced the AP in place. Hopefully you had the correct Cat cable, Cat 5 cable, because we're pulling a gig now, so you might want Cat 5e or Cat 6. Obviously we have to deal with the PoE considerations that you might have to look at your switch or put mid-span injectors in if you're added an AP that draws more than 802.3 AF, the 15.4 watts. So given those assumptions, they're installed, it's now up and running, and you want to configure. First, you have to configure the 2.4 gig frequency. Now this frequency, I've said in the past, is oversaturated, overused, just plain over. Wherever you go. I've been all around the world doing surveys and designs, and 2.4 frequency is just, ugly. But we still have devices that we have to use there, so we'll deal with that here. So in the 2.4 gig frequency, we're going to leave that for all the legacy devices. 2.4 gig will be legacy only. We're going to use 20 megahertz wide channels only. Never, ever, ever use a 40 megahertz wide channel in the 2.4 range. And of course, we're only going to use channels 1, 6, and 11. I'm still shocked as I go around where people use non-1, 6, and 11. In fact, I read in an online article somewhere where someone said, well, yeah, it's kind of like if you're on channel 3, it's like the collision's going beside you, but if you're on channel 1 and someone else is on channel 1, it's like a head-on collision. No, it's not like that at all. We only have channels 1, 6, and 11 for us to use. And don't say anything about overlapping versus non-overlapping. Just don't use the other channels. Next, turn off support for 802.11b. If you can. You might not be able to do that, but try very, very hard. There is a penalty for protection, both from a legacy versus HT or .11n, but there's also a penalty for just adding a B on a G network. So try to get rid of all the B's if you can. If you can't, you're going to just lower your expectations of what throughput can run. Next, whatever your current SSID is, say you're just corp, just leave it at the same SSID corp, whatever it is. We're going to leave that one there. I would also suggest you turn off support for 1, 2, and 5.5 meg data rates, and possibly 11 meg as well, which would turn off all CCK. You'd have an OFDM only system. And if you do have G only clients, they'll all be able to run fine. And they'll have a better net throughput, given that you're not allowing people to talk really, really slow on your network. So 2.4 gig is legacy only. Everyone who's non-HT legacy has to be in the 2.4 gig range. You don't even need to turn on N support for MIMO or the other fancy things, because if you do, it's not going to slow down the G clients any, but your N clients are going to go way far below what's possible if they were in the 5 gig range. So I try to encourage all the N clients to move to 5 gig. And on with that, let's talk about what we do in 5 gig. In the 5 gig frequency on the new replaced .11 NAP, 5 gig is going to be for greenfield only, or we call it HT. 5 gigahertz, we'll be using 40 megahertz wide channels. This is one of the features of .11n that allows you to have double wide channels. Some people mistakenly call these bonded. They're actually not two bonded together. There's a double wide. It's 40 megahertz wide, and there's a new nomenclature. You call it 1, 1, and it means it's centered not on 1, like we used to call all the channels. Their name was what their center frequency is. Now we're saying what's the left half start as, and does it go to the right, 1, 1, or does it go to the left, 1, -1? Now, so that positive and negative 1 is a new nomenclature for which side of the old 20 megahertz channel the new 40 looks like. And obviously this is much better with the graphics, so go on the web page with the supporting show notes and you'll see graphics that support these. So 5 gigahertz, we're going to use HT only, 40 megahertz wide channels, and use either Uni 1, Uni 2, Uni 2E, or Uni 3 as your country allows. You might want to stay away from the Uni 2E. There's a lot of choices to have in there, a lot of additional channels to choose from, but depending on where you live and where your site is located, you might have DFS problems, and you might want to go look up what that is with DFS and radar that would force one of your APs to change channels. So if you can get around that, use them, that's great. Next, and this is a very simple thing to do, change the SSID on the 5 gigahertz to corp fast. Just put the word -fast at the end of whatever your current SSID is. This is going to allow people to self-band steer. Anyone who can see corp fast has an N capable card and will just move over and jump into corp fast. People who can't see it and can't use it, well, they won't know any different. And if one of their friends tells them, hey, you should be out trying corp fast, that's a reason why you might want to upgrade them to a .11n NIC, and they can have all the benefits. This is going to be for HT only, so we can put a greenfield HT mode on. The reason we want to do that in the 5 gig is so we have no protection mode. We don't want the overhead that comes from having a mixed mode environment. And there was a big penalty. You lost about half of your throughput when you put a B on a G network. Well, you lose way more than a half, multiples of your throughput when you add a legacy device on an N network. So in this case, legacy devices in 5 gig would be 11A, and now you're not supporting an 11A. Well, I got this last term from one of my students once who called it a complaint-driven solution, because you had A devices that might have been using the 5 gig frequency in the past in 20 megahertz channels like they normally did. Now they no longer have access to 5 gig. We made 5 gig greenfield. So you will get people who complain. Well, when they complain, everyone who complains, you get them into a new N card, and they not only get much faster throughput on the 5 gigahertz now, they're not going to clog up or use up bandwidth that's kind of scarce over in the 2.4 gig range. So option 1, we love option 1. It's very simple. Replace every AP one for one. Dedicate 2.4 to legacy only. Dedicate 5 gig to greenfield only, and you'll be good to go. Now, what if you either have lots of A clients, or you've already committed and you have lots of .11a voice over IP over Wi-Fi handsets? Well, if that's the case, you can't just kick them all off like we talked about in option 1. So thus we go to option 2. In option 2, we're not going to replace access points, we're going to add them. And sometimes when I even first say this, people go, oh, that costs so much, think of all of those APs. Well, you're not adding any more APs than you had before. I doubt you got much resale value, trade-in value on your old APs, so we're just adding an AP. Now the cost isn't in the adding an AP, it's the same as doing replace. So option 1 and option 2 are the same cost-wise for AP. What the difference is, when you go to option 2 and you add an AP, you're going to need to add a new drop, a cable drop to the location. It will also take up another PoE switch port. So the costs are kind of on the back infrastructure side, not necessarily in the APs. And when you go to option 2, which is adding additional things, you take your old AP, leave it right where it was in place, turn off 2.4 gigahertz. We're going to replace it with the new .11n AP. Even though it's in legacy mode, it still will run better than your old one. So we're going to add a new AP, turn it on G only, and then follow all the exact same steps we did in option 1. 2.4 is legacy only, 20 megahertz wide channels, 1 and 6.11 only, turn off support for B, turn off 1, 2, 5, and 11. All of the things to make legacy as good as you can possibly make legacy, but it's still legacy. In the 5 gig frequency, we're going to have a change here. In the Uni 3 band, and this you might have to adapt depending on what handsets you have. I've just been working on a project this week where the handsets could only support Uni 3. If you have handsets that support only Uni 1, then you would replace that with this thing. So 5 gig, you are going to now dedicate 4 channels, the Uni 3 channels, or in the Uni 3 you can actually pull off 5, and those will be exclusive for .11a clients. You're going to call the SSID Corp Voice or something unique like that. Again, this is support for A only. You don't need to have any N support on there, and they're only 20 megahertz wide channels. So basically you just took a chunk of spectrum in 5 gig, dedicated it just to those .11a phones. 5 channels to choose from, that's enough. You can have a pretty decent design and still leave a lot of channels left over for the second part of option 2, which is the new access point. The N access point is going to follow exactly the same things as option 1. 5 gigahertz HT only, 40 megahertz wide channels, use all of the things you need, whichever channels you can choose in your country, turn off all non-HT legacy devices, don't support 20 megahertz channels, and adapt the channels to work within DFS. All the same things that were in option 1. So basically the only difference between option 1 and option 2 is we're going to be adding a new AP, turning off the 2.4 gig in the old AP, making the old AP be a A only, and there you go. 2 options, quick and dirty method of designing for N. Very simple. Go ahead and go on the website. I'll be posting up a white paper that runs over these, but the show notes are also there. It can show you the same things. Simple 2-option step, quick and dirty. Again, I know this isn't the best way to design for N, but it sure is the easy way. And if you don't have the budget or the time or any of those other features, here you go. I know, don't be hating. We know that I didn't talk about MIMO or designing for multipath or any of those other things. This was just the quick and dirty version. If you like it, give us some feedback on the website, wirelesslandprofessionals.com or WLANpros.com. They both resolve to the same location. And see if this is how you design for .11n, and it will be a quick and dirty way for you to do it yourself. So thanks for listening. This was Keith Parsons, and we'll see you again next week.
Wireless LAN Weekly, a podcast focused on the needs of wireless LAN professionals. We look forward to your feedback. Please leave your comments at the bottom of the show notes, or email feedback on the show can be sent to feedback@wirelesslandprofessionals.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail feedback, just call 24/7 and leave a message at 1-801-481-9018. Until next time, this has been another production of wirelesslandprofessionals.com, a place to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire.